in actual fact, I have always believed in karma and rebirth since I was a very, very small child. I remember believing that we are intrinsically perfect, but somehow we have lost sight of our true nature, and therefore we have to keep coming back again and again until we finally discover who we truly are and our innate pure nature. So as a result, I've always felt that this particular lifetime was just one in a continuity of endless past lifetimes. And I've always believed that what we are experiencing now in general is a result of past actions, and how we respond to what is happening to us now is creating our future. So everything, the past is being eaten up and the future is being created in this very moment. I mean, I think that collective karma is just lots of people who have similar karma being drawn together like a magnet, you know, so that they will experience the same things because they have created the similar causes in the past. Because even when something similar happens to some people, how they respond is very different. They don't all respond, you know, in uniformity. Some people gain something, some people do not, you know. You know, what happens to us may be conditioned by the past, but how we respond is open, you know. That's why we're training, isn't it? You know, so that we can respond skillfully. Yeah, why we're trying to learn to be more present, more clear, more aware, so that we do make skillful responses, no matter what happens. I mean, the problem is that often our conditioning creates unskillful responses, and then we just perpetuate the problem. Well, of course, that's a huge question. Because Tibetan Buddhism has many meditation techniques and many levels, right? From the simplicity of just sitting to highly complex tantric visualizations and yogic practices. I always think of Tibetan Buddhism like a Dharma supermarket, right? There is so much there, something for everybody. You know, if you don't resonate with that method, then try this method, right? There's so much there, it's so rich. But in our tradition, apart from the tantric visualization methods and yogic practices, there is also the Mahamudra, which is very, very similar to Soto Zen approach. It's to emphasize the awareness, the pure seeing of the object over the object itself. In other words, if one is focusing on the breath, the important thing is not the breath, which is just a hook, but the knowing of the breath. That's the important thing. And so when the awareness is clear, when we are really clear, the awareness is sharp, then we drop the object and just become aware of being aware. Like an eagle flying in the sky, you know, not making any effort. So there's this feeling of like an effortless eagle being held up by the currents. But that eagle, though it's very effortless, is totally present, totally aware. That is not a sleeping eagle, right? It's very sharp, clear, but effortless. But along with that comes the examination of the thoughts. What is a thought? Where do thoughts come from? Where do they go to? What do they feel like? Who is thinking? Right? That's the vipassana side of it. The shamatha side is the, you know, floating and being aware. But then comes the questioning of the mind. What is a thought? We swim in an ocean of thinking, but we're not aware of the nature of the water. So that's very important, to recognize really what is a thought and who is thinking, right? And if we say, well, I am thinking, the ultimate question, who am I? Right? And the search for that I. And then also the object of all this is to transcend the dualistic nature of our conceptual thinking mind, right? Including mindfulness and the object of mindfulness, which is still a duality. And then to recognize the non-dual nature of our pristine awareness, of our pure consciousness, which connects us with all beings instead of separates us from beings. All these practices are really to come back to the nature of the mind. I think it's very, very useful, because otherwise you can get into a state of being open and clear, but we haven't really understood what is mind and how much we are caught in our conceptual thinking mind, in our memories and our ideas and so forth, and identify with that. So we have to examine, what is a thought? We are thinking. What is a thought?
What is a thought without a thinker?
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying to get to. But, you know, in the beginning there is a thinker. So examine that. Yes, well, I mean, recently I was in Japan. Mostly we were following the path of Kukai, or Kobodaishi, in the Shingon school, because that is the one tantric school in Japan. And it's actually, really, I was surprised, it's actually very popular. It's probably, along with Pure Land, the most popular Buddhist tradition in Japan. But we did notice that, so also going to like Nara and Kyoto and some other places, how much all these temples had been turned into like museums. There was very little genuine devotion there, or places where you could show devotion, because it's all become crowded by tourists. And even the Zen monasteries, there were very few, very few people actually doing any kind of practice there. So yeah, but anyway, the Japanese way of training, especially in Zen school, seems to be related to the samurai code, which was strict and not necessarily very kind. So, but the Buddha himself always emphasized the importance of the 4 Brahma Viharas, of loving kindness and compassion and rejoicing and equanimity. And how important it is to open up the heart, to embrace all sentient beings, not just humans, especially through the cultivation of loving kindness and compassion. That's very important. And if you leave that out, then you know, you've truncated the whole Buddha Dharma message. So while one has indeed strict discipline and good training, there should also be laughter and a love of joyful fun, you know. I would say we were in the Sakidita, which you mentioned, but this last Sakidita we did was held in Korea by the Korean Nuns Foundation. And it was very joyful. Everybody was having such a good time. And the Korean nuns are very strict in their discipline. They really exemplify, you know, well-trained. But there's also a joyfulness, a laughter. They love playing. So the two sides of clear discipline and at the same time open, spacious joy. I think it's very important. And Tibetans themselves love to laugh and play. but they're also very serious in their studies and their practice. So they don't negate each other, and the two bring each other into a good balance. I mean, so discipline should therefore be easy to follow because it seems natural, right? Not enforced by a fear of punishment. Nothing tense, tight, but natural inner balance, which manifests as outer discipline. You know, well, you set out the day in you know, different sections, and you keep to that. You have your own inner rhythm. I mean, the thing is to be very clear in your own mind what you intend to do, and, you know, set down timings to do it, and then you just do it, right? But I always suggest that people, before they go into a solitary retreat, has an experience of group retreats, so that they get the idea how to set out, you know, a meditation retreat properly, and to be very clear what they're trying to do, and if problems come up, how to solve them, which is why group retreats are very helpful, because then you meet with the teacher, the master, and they can guide, so that you have confidence in your practice before you start. Otherwise, if you go into retreat, you've never done a retreat before, and you haven't got a clue really what you're going to do, and then, you know, you sit there, and then maybe your knees ache, and you think, oh, maybe I'll get up and have a cup of coffee, and, you know, start again later. And then the whole thing kind of unravels, because one doesn't have that experience of disciplined sitting. Well, that's why I think it's important to do, first of all, group practices like they do in Zen, where everybody sits together, and people give Vipassana courses and Shamatha courses, because then during that time one can learn how to sit, what is the object and the style of practice. If doubts come up, there's a teacher that one can refer to who is giving guidance. So in that way, one becomes confident in one's practice. And in that case, then one can go also into solitary retreats with that confidence of knowing what one's doing and how to deal with any problems that might come up. And that's the point. If one just starts off by oneself, then one might be confused about the path that one is trying to follow. Or because there are so many options in the world nowadays, which we all know about. There's Zen practice, there's Vipassana practice, there's Tibetan practice, there's this practice and that practice. If after a few days nothing much seems to be happening, or you're finding it difficult, oh, well, maybe I'll stop that, I'll try I've got a book on doing something else, and so I'll try that one instead. And in the end, the whole thing just, as I say, unravels, because one is trying to dig too many holes in the desert and is never going to get down to the water source. And I mean, many of them are good. It's not that there's this one is good and that one's not good. But as I say, you know, if you're digging a hole, you have to keep digging. And if you, after, you know, a few feet, nothing, you don't get any, you know, it's still the earth is not moist, then you think, well, I'll go and dig a hole somewhere else. Oh no, maybe I should dig a hole there. And you end up just with a desert full of holes, but nothing deep enough to have got down to the underground lake. It's very difficult nowadays. I mean, there's too much choice. Like going into a supermarket and there's 40 different kinds of yogurt. You know, you go into a shop in India and you ask, is there any yogurt? Well, there might be, there might not be, but there's only one kind. That's it, right? You don't have to sit there for half an hour deciding whether you want skimmed or semi-skimmed, or, you know, strawberry flavored or apricot flavored or bio, you know, dynamics or whatever. I mean, you get what you got, what's on offer, and that's it. So I think now Dharma has become really very confusing for many people, because all the choices being given are good choices. It's not that they're not good, but we have to stick to one path more or less. Otherwise, it stays shallow.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with that. So, moving on to number 4, regarding kindness and harmony, and community and sangha. In your talk on kindness, you said, in a monastic sangha, we're all sisters together. And it is very important not to take each other for granted. A lot of the Vinaya is about how to create harmony in society. And considering how the term Sangha is used in American Zen context, to refer to the community of practitioners, including majority lay practitioners, could you elaborate on these terms, Sangha, community, and perhaps metta, and harmony?
Well, I mean, as we know, the Buddha established a fourfold Sangha of monastics and lay people of both genders, right? So that was the fourfold Sangha. He said the fourfold Sangha was like a table with 4 legs, which would be very stable. And nowadays, of course, in Asia, in Buddhist Asian countries, the word Sangha mostly refers to the monastic Sangha, and especially to the monks. But Sangha in itself means a community. So the Buddha emphasized that when people come together in the name of the Dharma, then they should cultivate harmonious actions of body, speech, and mind. For example, seniors should guide and instruct juniors, and juniors should respect and serve seniors. And like in a well-functioning family, traditionally, the young helped the elders helped and instructed the young ones. So that way there was harmony, right? I mean, in our nunnery, the young nuns help the older nuns look after and teach and guide and protect the younger ones. So in that way, we have metta, we have friendliness, right? There's towards each other, and the opportunity to practice and cultivate patience and kindness. We have to be kind to each other. If in a Dharma center we're not even kind to each other, then what's the point? The Sangha should seem like a welcoming place where one can trust each other to be kind and share together in practice, study, and service. We should feel comfortable in our Sangha, right? And inwardly at ease, even if we observe the outer discipline and protocol. It should be a welcoming, warm place for us to be, where we feel accepted and cared for. And this was what the Buddha very much emphasized in his teaching on Sangha, that it should be a harmonious community, not acrimonious or difficult, but somewhere where we feel is our genuine inner home, like a family, like a well-integrated, happy family. And it's very important, especially in our society nowadays, when people are feeling so isolated and alone, and they don't feel that they fit in anywhere. A Dharma community should be something which is like a nest, welcoming and safe, and you can just inwardly feel at peace and relax. That's how it should be.
Given the fact there's so much disharmony in the society now, it's the one refuge, or one of the few refuges.
It's hard, but people really should be conscious of their actions of body, speech, and mind. I mean, because it all comes from the mind, our speech and our actions. And so people should become more conscious. And the cultivation of loving kindness is so important. And respect and appreciation and all these good qualities of the heart. Not jealousy and criticism and judgmental actions, but being open and kindly accepting. I mean, indeed, it does seem that the rate of mental health issues seems to be on the rise in a really basically very dysfunctional society in which most people nowadays live. So, if people are simply suffering from stress, then a gentle shamatha meditation and mindfulness training can really help, right? But if they're psychotic or schizophrenic, for example, then meditation might actually bring up more than they can handle and send them over the edge, especially if they don't have a skillful teacher. Likewise, for those who are suffering from trauma, and that seems to be on the increase again, maybe it would be better to start by consulting a therapist who is expert in that field and can help them to deal with their problems skillfully. Meditation works well with a healthy, balanced mind. So therefore, the Buddha recommended shamatha to help us to heal our mind and cultivate a well-tamed mind that is amenable to being trained. But, you know, the idea is to create like a tool, a well-shaped tool which is ready to be used. But this takes time and application. I mean, I often say it takes a lot of effort to become effortless. And if people's minds are already in a very delicate state, modern psychotherapy might be more helpful at the beginning to get them into a balanced level, rather than plunging into a 10-day Vipassana course, which if you're already on the edge of being psychotic, probably will send you over the edge. And does send people over the edge. So this is one contribution which the West can give to the East. I mean, I think we should remember that Buddhism is very amenable to absorbing the culture of whatever country it goes to. So you have Japanese Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Thai Buddhism, Chinese Buddhism, Sri Lanka Buddhism, etc. It absorbs the culture and ideas of the country in which it settles. And so now that it's gone to the West, it is also taking on many of the aspects which the West is especially good in, such as psychotherapy and psychiatry, which is also learning from Buddhism, of course. I mean, it goes both ways, right? Recently, I spoke with one young woman who was studying in an Indian college. She was studying psychiatry. She's about to take her MA in psychiatry. But she said nowadays psychiatry is all about meditation and mindfulness. And even so, you know, both are learning from each other and can help each other and support each other. I don't think it's an either or, it's a both and. Well, I mean, I think it has to do with our ideas about what is compassion and what is compassionate action. In Tibetan Buddhism, the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara Kwanon, right, represents compassion, right? Kwanon is compassion. And in the Tibetan Buddhism also, he, it's a male in Tibetan, is shown as white and smiling and holding a lotus, as you would expect. But the other manifestation of Avalokiteshvara is Mahakala, the great black one. And he's a very wrathful leader of all the Dharma protectors, right? Right? He's terrifying. Because sometimes beings cannot be tamed by peaceful means, right? And one needs to appear threatening. But Mahakala is pure, skillful compassion, right? He is not angry, but wholly compassionate, even while his actions appear wrathful, right? He's not, it's always wisdom and clear seeing, never blind rage. I mean, you can consider it like a mother with a small child, and the child wants to run out in the street with all the traffic, and the mother says, "No, dear, don't go near the edge of the road. Come back." And so, of course, the child wants to go further. "No, come back, don't go near the road." And so the little boy runs further near the traffic. And then the mother says, "Don't go near the road, come back here." And she pulls him back. It's not because she's angry with the child. It's not because she hates the child. It's because she sees the danger the child's actions will bring to it. And out of compassion, she has to appear wrathful in order to get the child to do what he needs to do in order not to hurt himself and others. So it's like that. Sometimes we have to appear very, because just being sweet is not going to achieve the goal, to prevent that person from doing more harm. But the motivation, the real motivation, is our loving compassion and seeing the danger in what that person is going to do, not out of anger or a desire for retaliation. It's just motivation which is the important part. We can also appear very sweet and nice, but our motivation is something very twisted and not good, wanting harm for that other person, even while we're smiling sweetly. So always the Buddha said, karma is intention. Yeah, well, certainly hate is a very unwholesome feeling, and fear also likewise, which is a very common emotion, which comes up even while people are meditating. What is the source of that fear, right? Where is that fear coming from? Usually it's the ego, which is fearful, maybe because of early traumatic memories or because it feels threatened through our practice. I mean, the point with fear, as with anger or anything, is to bring it up and to look at it with loving eyes, not with angry eyes or fearful eyes. We shouldn't fear fear. We should get into dialogue with the fear, kindly. What's your problem? What are you afraid of? Come on, tell me, what's the problem here? Let's sit down and have a cup of tea and discuss what you're fearful of fear. Make friends with fear. Then fear will of itself transform. Bring all the darkness into the light, in other words. You know, all these dark emotions and fears and resentments and anger and desire for retribution. Bring it up into the light. Shine the light on it, and darkness naturally dissolves in the face of light. If we keep it submerged, if we keep it pressed down or denied, then it grows more and more in the darkness. That's one of the points in meditation, is that these feelings should come up and we should allow them to speak. and not try to suppress them or even to transform them, but just to allow them to express themselves, then naturally of themselves, they begin to transform. Well, of course, this is again a huge question, and it's been brought up a lot now because of unsuitable conduct on behalf of teachers who appeared to be very eminent and turned out had another side. So it's always difficult. I mean, one problem is that, especially in a larger setting, we often only see the teacher in their role as the teacher and not how they are behind the scenes, so to speak, in ordinary everyday life. It's as the Dalai Lama said that there should be no difference between their actions, their conduct while sitting on a throne and behind the scenes. And that if there is a difference, then we should be very careful about that so-called teacher. So ask ourselves, how does, for example, how does the teacher treat people who might be sponsors versus ordinary people who are no special benefit to him or his Dharma center? Does the teacher seem to embody Dharma in daily life and in their interactions with others? Right? In stressful situations, how does he respond? How are the senior students of this teacher? Would you like to be like them? Do they embody qualities superior to ordinary people that you know? Are they more kind and considerate, more generous and good-natured? Do they have a good sense of humor, and are they unpretentious? Are they the kind of person we would wish to evolve into? This is a very important question. Not the new students, but students who have been with the teacher for many, many years and who have been shaped by his teaching and his presence. What is the feeling in the Sangha? Is it warm and welcoming, or is it, very unwelcoming? Some Dharma centers, you immediately, a new person feels like an outsider, and it's very cliquey or cult-like. And to be sensitive to that, what's going on here? Because, it emanates from the teacher. And if it seems like a warm, welcoming, happy group of people who are serious about the Dharma, but good-natured and kind and good-humored, then you could think, yeah, this is a good place. This is a safe place. So like that, it's not just the teacher, it's the effect the teacher has on others. In the tantric text it says one should examine the teacher up to 12 years before accepting them as your teacher.
I don't have time.
Well, you don't have to spend 10 years, but up to 12 years. The point is not to just jump into it because the teacher looks cute or is charismatic or has lots of students or has a nice big fancy center, but really to examine quite critically how everything unfolds, what the mandala looks like, and whether or not you really want to be a part of this. Well, of course, it is important to know what later masters wrote. They also reflect the culture of their times. Dogen was, he reflects, his background and what was going on and what was important at the time when he lived. And the Tibetans themselves also rely on the later Buddhist teachers like Nagarjuna and Aryadeva, Indian masters from the great Buddhist universities of Nalanda and Vikramasila. and Atisha and all these people, as well as later Tibetan scholars like in the Gelugpa, the Tsongkhapa, and Longchenpa, and many, many different great teachers that they read and their commentaries and their original works and rely on those much more than they do on the sutras. They hardly read the sutras. In fact, they're much more likely to read Nagarjuna than they are to read the Buddha. However, for us, nowadays, there is so much which has been reputably translated of the sutras of the Pali Canon and the sutras on the Mahayana. And so it's good and inspiring to know what probably the Buddha actually said, as far as we can know. And I think in the Pali Canon especially, the Buddha really walks on the dusty ground, you know, and he gets his feet dirty. And he's a personality. You know, you feel after you've been reading a little of the Pali Canon, you really feel you get to know the Buddha. So he was a man as well as a Buddha. So the Pali Canon and many of the Mahayana sutras are full of practical wisdom for all occasions. And I think it's, as Buddhists, modern Buddhists nowadays, we need to also know what the Buddha taught. And not just what was made of it later in other cultures which are very distanced, actually, from India. So, of course, silent sitting meditation is really very good, but it's also good to do this type of analytical meditation, as we mentioned above. You know, what is a thought, where are thoughts coming from, and so forth. Activate that questioning level of the mind. Also, it's very important, I think, to practice the Brahma Viharas, loving kindness and compassion. We have to activate the heart. Bodhicitta meditation to connect us with all beings and to set our motivation, right? This is very important, that we don't just do sitting meditation, but we do other kind of devotion. Cultivate the heart. When I would go before to America, I was often asked to talk at various Zen centers. And I would say, well, you know, I can't talk in the Zen center on meditation. You know, you're the experts in that. What do you want me to talk about? And invariably they would say, talk about compassion and devotion. Because while we are quite good on the wisdom aspect, we're not very good on the heart compassion aspect, and Tibetans are good at that. So I would talk about cultivating compassion and loving kindness and about devotion to the teachers, to the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and the importance of opening the heart. And then people would always come and say how they needed that somehow something had gone cold inside, and they needed that sense of opening up an interconnection with all beings, with a loving, devoted heart, and how that was somehow it got lost with all this just sitting meditation. So I think that that's very important. You know, we breathe in and we breathe out. So social engagement, yoga and Tai Chi, gardening, painting, nature walks, making people laugh in a kind way, learning how to be kind. You know, all these qualities of the heart are very important and very much a part of the Dharma. I mean, if you look at the paramita, meditation is only one of the aspects needed for a bodhisattva. We also need ethical conduct and generosity and patience, and many other qualities of the heart are needed on the bodhisattva path, not just sitting, Nowhere does it ever say that only sitting is enough. We also have to cultivate the other qualities within ourselves. Otherwise, it's not enough. Well, you know, as I said before, the Buddha described karma as intention. So sometimes a good-looking action may mask a wrong intention, and actions that appear unskillful may have a good underlying intention. Since we often act with an intention of helping, but we lack clear insight or wisdom, sometimes good intentions may cause more trouble. That's one reason why compassion must always be conjoined with wisdom. Right? Some people are very kind and good intention, but they lack the wisdom, the clear insight in how to actually be of help or of use. So being compassionate alone can cause more trouble. Being wise alone can make you very cold. So the two coming together are like the wings on the bird, which will fly us to Buddhahood.